Hello, everybody. I am known by many names: Mountain Slayer, Thunder Lion, the Chocolate Axe. But today, you may call me Tiffany. And of course, welcome back to another episode of the Dragonus Podcastus. I am your host, Tiffany, and with me again is Queen Byron.
Hello, everyone.
For the first time, well, you guys won't see it, but we're actually doing a video call during our recording, which is actually quite fun. And we just finished our watching the D&D Direct announcement showcase, and we're actually excited to do this episode because originally we were going to do the cleric, but then Byron actually told me about this, and I was like, okay, let's do that. And then, yeah. And also I've got my support animal here, just in case he's a little shy. Anyway, if you guys want to support us, you can do so Patreon at patreon.com/Dragonus Podcastus. So, Byron, you want to kind of lead us off and just explain everything?
Yeah, so like we said, we just finished watching the newest announcement from Wizards of the Coast, which they are calling D&D Direct. They did one last year around this time, and they just did one this morning. So we thought we'd watch the video and cover all the breaking news for all of our viewers. The first thing that they talked about, it's actually something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. They're doing a small Minecraft D&D crossover. So if you go to dndbeyond.com, you can get stat blocks for several of the creatures that are, or the mobs that are from Minecraft, including the Blaze, Creeper, Ender Dragon, Ender Man, and what they call the Wolf of the Overworld. And I'm chuckling a little bit just because back in 2018, I was running a D&D game, and I love Minecraft. I've played for years. I put Minecraft creatures in my campaign. I made a custom magic item that would summon a random animal from the animals that were found in Minecraft, and I've also created stat blocks for the Enderman and used those in my games as well. So I love that they have this official crossover, but I like the Ender Dragon stacks. I think it's really interesting.
Now, I do have one question. What would the Ender Dragon like breathe in terms of its breath weapon if it's gonna be a dragon?
Right, so on its stat block, it actually has a it's called Harmful Breath, and they're calling it Putrid Gas. So if you've played Minecraft, you know that there's a dragon breath attack, and you can collect that stuff in bottles if you care to try, but it's very damaging. In the stat block, it's called Harmful Breath, Recharge 5/6. They're calling it Putrid Gas. It's got a 60-foot cone, and it's a DC 21 Constitution saving throw, or take 15 D6 necrotic damage.
Jesus.
Half on a successful save. It's rough. It is so rough. This is a CR 19 creature, folks, so put this at the end of the game, or, in the end, as it were, and give your players a challenge, yeah.
And well, whatever you do, also don't look at the Enderman. If I understand, it has been a while since I played Minecraft, but if I know one thing about Minecraft, don't look at the Enderman.
Yeah, they have something that they put in the stat book called evasive teleportation. They're not really referencing the like you said, the line of sight type of thing, but it basically, the Enderman can't take damage from range attacks. It just teleports.
That's crazy.
So that is something that we see in Minecraft too. If you targeted a Enderman with a bow and arrow attack, he would teleport away before the arrow hit. So definitely a melee type creature. The Enderman, they put as a CR 6. It has 2 slam attacks per turn. They've also given it a sunlight sensitivity and a water susceptibility, because, again, in kind of Minecraft lore, Endermen are sensitive to sunlight and water. And then they do have a chance to drop an Ender Pearl, which they're valuing at 500 gold piece. That's quite a lot. If you end up with an Ender Pearl, you can use it to teleport, very similar to how Ender Pearls work in Minecraft.
Very, very cool. And then there's the Creepers, which is pretty much the face of Minecraft, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're one of their most iconic mobs. That's in the logo, in the Minecraft logo, And the creeper has a really interesting thing because it doesn't actually have any attacks. But what it does is it tries to get within at least 10 feet of a humanoid creature. Then it starts to hiss. And they have a huge thing here about how it explodes, what are the effects. There's a whole bunch of stuff listed here. But basically, it doesn't attack. It just gets close and blows up.
Yeah, you don't want to be on the receiving end of those. Or, oh dear God, if it was a creeper that's struck by lightning, oh God, that makes it even worse.
Yeah, so they don't have anything in here for charged creeper, but that would be absolutely really easy to, homebrew if you kind of just doubled all of these damages and things like that. Oh wait, it does. I'm sorry. It says electrical charge. When the creeper is subjected to lightning damage, it takes no damage. Instead, becomes charged for a minute. While charged, the creeper emits dim blue light in a 5-foot radius. See, I would also have it double its damage output, because a charged creeper blows up and it makes a bigger crater and it deals more damage if it does.
Yeah. Okay. So, are you excited for the? Oh, I think you've already seen it, but have you? Are you excited about the new D&D movie?
I am. So I did get a chance to see it already. As part of Amazon Prime subscriber perks, I got to see it a couple of weeks ago, and I loved it. If you love fantasy adventures, you'll like it too. We will be doing a review of the movie in depth without spoilers and with coming up on the channel, so stay tuned for that. But we saw a lot in the D&D Direct announcement video, a lot of tie-ins, a lot of references. So one of the things that they referenced was new collectible figures featuring the characters from Honor Among Thieves and characters from the classic 80s cartoon as well. So that was really interesting. And they also... Sorry, go ahead.
I actually have never seen the cartoon, but I know of it, and from what I heard, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really got a cult following. Around Halloween time, you can find, costumes for the characters at, like, Spirit Halloween and places like that. So people really like it.
I'm interested about these figures because as when we saw it, they had a golden Xanathar who is a beholder. He's like, isn't he like doesn't he live in the city of Waterdeep?
Yeah, so he's like a crime boss or a lord of Waterdeep. Yep, in Waterdeep. Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the Displacer Beast, which that thing is scary because it's basically a combination of a panther and it has little two tendrils. I actually forget what they do, but I know they're pretty scary.
Yeah, I believe they have either teleportation or illusion magic, or maybe even a combination. However, they're still only like a CR3 creature, so their power level is a bit funny,
And who can forget the owl bear, combining the best of both worlds? Unfortunately, it doesn't fly. That's the only thing. It doesn't fly.
Mhm. So yeah, we saw new toys announced and new figures. So those are going to be like collectible things. The scale for them is not really made for like a in-person tabletop kind of a thing, but something to put on the shelf and put on display.
Yeah, and there's also something about the Magic the Gathering crossover with another reference to the Honor Among Thieves movie, because they've got what was it, six of the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they showed off some regular and like foil, I suppose. I don't play Magic, so I don't know all the terms, but they showed off a set of the cards featuring 6 of the characters from, again, Honor Among Thieves, which was the 5 main party members and one of the people that they meet along the way. And they're doing another crossover. I think they really want people to go and see the movie, and they want to, increase the audience for D&D in general. So Magic the Gathering is having a set of Honor Among Thieves characters as cards. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Magic also did a thing with a crossover with Baldur's Gate, if I remember correctly. That was maybe a year ago. I just remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Also, there's these new novels coming out from R.A. Salvatore. I actually don't know much about the novels because that's the only thing I'm not familiar with. I do have the Shannara collection. I'm just missing the Sword of Shannara, but based on what we saw, I think this new book set is going to be interesting. And I think it's really cool that they actually managed to get an interview with him, because he's like one of the best sellers, and he's up there with Gary Gygax as being like basically the entire reason that not the entire reason, but one of the reasons that D&D has basically kind of expanded this new territory, which is really cool.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see some of the new books and things that are coming out. And I haven't read any of R.A. Salvatore's work, but I know he's been publishing books for a really long time. He's got a ton of stuff out there.
And then we've got new the Neverwinter video game content. There's new content for that. Now I don't play any of the D&D games myself, save for maybe like I did play a little bit of Baldur's Gate. I played a little bit of Pathfinder, the Pathfinder game. But I don't know much about Neverwinter, but it's a good thing that they've got new content for that, and that I know Neverwinter does have kind of a following, but it's, from what I understand, it's very up and down in terms of like the player base. It's not like Guild Wars or World of Warcraft or Star Wars: The Old Republic, but it's good that they got new content. And then we saw the virtual tabletop from D&D Beyond. They're basically they're showing off the virtual tabletop feature that they were doing, and they actually some of the people got to play a little bit, and that was really cool. I really thought that was interesting. But you did say in our private conversation that you kind of had a bit of a negative bias towards D&D Beyond right now. Do you want to
Well,
kind of
no, I wouldn't say, yeah, not necessarily negative bias, but what really struck me from watching the footage, which they did say was alpha, so it's only still in alpha development. What really struck me was they were all sitting around a table, and they had like what looked like kind of like a continent map or like a world map on the big dining room table, like a big gaming table. However, all of the people were on separate laptops, and they were playing virtually in the same room. But that just really struck me as odd, because when I get together with my friends, or if I'm at a convention or a local game store, I go to those places to interact with people and to share that experience in person on the table. Everybody in the video was behind a laptop, so while they were talking or chatting or whatever, it felt very disconnected. I mean, kind of reminded me of like those old LAN parties, where you would bring your computer to your friend's house and you guys would all play the same video game online. But the difference is with D&D, you can play in person on a table, which they had, and you can play with minis that you paint, or maybe you have just like, some people use candy as monsters, so you have like a little kiss or several of them wrapped candies on the table, and when you defeat the monster, you get to eat the candy. That's super cool. It felt really strange to me. I don't love the idea of having everyone on separate devices when you're all together. Now, if you were playing separately, through distance or whatever, obviously, I use a virtual tabletop every single week. I love it. It's allowed me to play with people from all over the world. But when I get together with people, I want to connect. I don't want to be staring at my laptop screen. I want to play with the figures on the table. And also, they were all rolling virtual dice or digital dice. I have a huge collection of dice, and I curate a set from my collection every time I have a new player, or, when I play in a new game. Let's say if I'm playing like a paladin, maybe I'll choose golds and yellows, represent that radiant damage. But they were all rolling digital dice. It totally, for me, that ruins the experience. I want to roll my physical dice at the table, if I'm at a table, right? So I feel like it kind of missed the mark. The features were quite stunning. It was very cinematic. They showed some animated spell effects and stuff like that, and it was gorgeous. It really looked like a video game or a high-end like CGI type movie. But I think it just kind of missed the mark for me. When I play in person, I want to play with my friends. I want to play with the minis, and I want to play with the dice.
Yeah, for me, it's always been for me in person, and I do like all the dice. I have the dice. I actually hand draw my maps because that's what I grew up with. But I also like make my own character sheets, but because that's what I grew up on. But I think it's an interesting idea, but I don't know how far they're gonna go with it.
Hmm.
But then the other thing we also saw was the documentary, which is detailing the 50 years of D&D, which is being directed by Joe Manganiello, I believe his name is.
Manganello. Yep.
And they're not just like covering like all the different content that was created. They're basically covering like a bunch of different stories from different people. They've got like comedians, like they showed Stephen Colbert, a still of Stephen Colbert with a new D&D book, and it was like, oh, that's cool, because I know Stephen Colbert's he's a big Lord of the Rings fan, but I didn't think he was a D&D person. But I think it's cool that they're kind of branching out to celebrities. They've got like, they even said like wrestlers. They had like um players, DMs, content
Hmm.
creators, streamers. That's really cool. That's good. That kind of makes it so that people are recognized, that they don't feel so insignificant within the context of their own game, and it's not like people aren't interested. I think that's really cool, and
Hmm.
that's they're announcing that ironically next year, which is the year of the dragon, which is actually kind of funny, and
Hmm.
I think that's really appropriate. Um, it's I'm actually kind of excited for that, and I really want to see that. Now, as for the new books, this is the big one. So, in 2023, so for this year, they've got Bigby presents Glory of the Giants. Now, I don't know who Bigby is, but this is supposed to be a new adventure book. They, oh yeah, do you want to explain this one?
Yeah, well, so Bigby is actually one of those spellcasters who has spells named after him.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. I forgot
so
about
this
that.
is this is where I make one more complaint. This is one of my more famous complaints. They have had several spellcasters written books, essentially, right, from Mordekainen, Volo, and Tasha, and yet they still have not released another spell book. So Bigby presents yet another non-spell book.
Yeah.
This is a complaint that I've made for, gosh, going a long time. Since the first Mordenkainen book came out, I've been complaining that there haven't been new spellbooks added, despite having books that were kind of authored by famous spellcasters. But they're going to be looking into the history of the Giants, their kind of backstories, the prologue, and stuff like that. So if you're into Giants, you should check it out.
And yeah, and they announced an expansion of the new starter stat. Well, the starter stat you can get, which is Fandelver and Below. I'm actually not familiar with that one. That one kind of eludes me because I've actually never heard of Fandelver. Actually.
Really? Yeah, so Van Delver is a location. It's kind of a small town, I believe, in the starter set, which was a box set that came with kind of everything you needed to get started, and that was Lost Mine of Fandelver.
Oh, okay. Okay, that make okay. Um, and then they also have Planescape Adventures in the Multiverse. Now that one I'm interested in because there's so many things you can do with multiverse campaigns, and I think this is the new books are definitely gonna be like the high sellers, maybe even like more so than like the collectibles. Um, but then in 2024 they've got stuff for, which is another tie into the movie. They got the Red Wizards of Thay, which are what we see in the D&D movie trailer, which, not gonna lie, they look really good. I'm gonna say that's really good. Then they got the main villain from the classic 80s cartoon Vengar. I am kind of excited because I've heard, because like I said, the 80s cartoon I've heard is really good, and oh, I think the big highlight is definitely the villain. Didn't they also like do a reference to them, to the group from the 80s cartoon in the movie?
I want to spoil it for our viewers.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's, and then they've got the League of Malevolence, which is multiverse villains that are vying for power, and that's kind of like a villain conglomerate. It's kind of like the Legion of Doom. Um, I'm actually kind of wondering if they like get together like at like a villain convention and they just talk about how how they're defeated, or how close they've come to actually getting world dominance or ultimate power, like and so many like other media like DC, like um the How It Should Have Ended series, they actually do have like a a tavern style where all the villains get together and they talk about, oh, you should have done this, you should have done this, or you were so close but you let your vanity take over. It's and then it cuts back to Superman and Batman just joking about it. I'm actually this one is gonna be it's gonna be a fun. It's gonna be absolutely fun, and you can do so much with it, and there's so many more stuff that they can do. Like I I would not be surprised if they throw in a Skeletor. If they throw in like they do a crossover with He-Man and they throw in Skeletor, like the classic Skeletor, not like it's from the 80s cartoon.
Mhm.
That I would just I could die officially happy because I mean I love He-Man. Like I grew up on those cartoons. For my mom it was actually She-Ra, but um
Then,
imagine
then
if
the
yeah.
well, the last one that they announced that will be coming probably in 2024 or later was a Vecna supplement, which is really interesting. We saw Vecna featured in the most recent uh, season of Stranger Things. So they're going to be, I guess, expanding on his backstory, potentially writing an adventure where you go and hunt him down. Who knows?
Ooh. Now
We'll have to wait and see.
I have not seen Stranger Things. I know of it. I've seen scenes with the
Hmm.
Demogorgon, but other than that, I don't know much.
Yeah, so Vecna is a kind of a long-standing villain in D&D history, and it's kind of interesting because he has kind of aspects of him. If you found Vecna's hand, for instance, you could cut off your own hand and replace it. And then there were also things like Vecna's eye. I think there was one more, and what's really kind of funny is actually a couple of years ago or so, I don't remember the exact dates, they had a Forgotten Realms and Magic the Gathering crossover, and we got cards. We bought a set, and we got Magic cards featuring big, Vecna's eye, Vecna's hands. We got cards with Tasha on them, and some of those, classic spells and things like that. It's kind of a interesting thing. We're going to see more classic D&D kind of coming back from the past and brought in and modernized.
Yeah, and they also announced the new magic item, the Deck of Many Things supplement, which
Hmm.
I don't know what the Deck of Many Things is, but I'm guessing it's
Oh,
either
well, I'd like to hear your guesses.
I'm taking a wild guess and saying it's a tarot deck.
Um, not exactly, although I think that would probably be the closest comparison to what we have here kind of in our world. The Deck of Many Things, well, first of all say, is kind of a campaign ender. It is a magic item. It's been around for a really long time, and they have sold different like physical copies. So if you wanted to have one in your campaign, you could literally buy a deck of cards and hand it to the player. But the way it works is the person who's holding the deck calls out how many cards they want to draw before they even start, and they have to draw that many cards, basically. But each card has wildly different effects, and they just can... campaign ender is the best way to describe it, honestly. They just do so many different things, where you might have like a wish spell, you can have, you know, things happen that the players could never achieve on their own, but through this incredibly powerful magic item, anything's possible, but every card is different, and you have to call out how many you draw before you do, and it just ends up, derailing whatever plot you might have. So encourage all of our viewers to look it up, look up the Deck of Many Things. I'm sure all the details are on D&T Beyond or other similar websites. And, we'll see what the supplement is about. Maybe they have a way to play with the deck where it's a little less powerful and not so game-breaking. That would be really interesting to see. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it would probably be like a Yu-Gi-Oh deck because when I think of when you think like you're drawing cards, there's actually a card in Yu-Gi-Oh called the Pot of Greek, which lets you draw two
Yep.
cards from your deck. Not gonna lie, if they did a crossover with Yu-Gi-Oh, that would be super interesting. I don't know how they would do that, but that would be really cool. They could do like so many different crossovers with different franchises. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was all the that's the big announcements. Oh yeah, another. They also announced that they're going to be releasing all this stuff in like batches, like it's just to kind of like make sure like it's not like an all at once thing. Thank goodness. 'Cause we don't want to be overwhelmed by this. Um, they also had like a little skit where like a mimic and a baby owl bear escaped from what was it, a containment area.
Yeah, from Wizards headquarters.
That I think that would be that's a good little skit to do. And I know the models themselves aren't exactly scaled to what you would want, but they're it's really cool. If anything, a mimic like causing havoc is one of the scariest things. Like I play Dark Souls, and mimics are probably the one thing I fear more so than any of the other enemies or any of the bosses, because you just don't know what they can do. They could be either your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was kind of just what we saw. Any thoughts and comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they're doing a lot more crossovers. They're trying to increase kind of brand recognition for all of their properties. So, video games, the novels, the Magic the Gathering cards, with D&D, all of that stuff kind of tying in together and, that synergy. I'm really excited to see, I know not a huge fan of the Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants, but I always love to see all new books, honestly. Just love 5th edition content, can't get enough. So yeah, excited to see when those come out.
So next week we're gonna be reviewing the D&D movie. That's gonna be a lot of fun because I'm actually going to see it this weekend. This is gonna be this is big because based on past D&D movies, I'm cautious because now, granted, the very first D&D movie that I ever saw had what was it? I think it was Jeremy Irons,
Yep.
and okay, not gonna lie, the movie is not bad on its own. It's a good campaign, but the effects are kind of bad. There's a lot of like over and underacting. There's moments where I'm like, why? Just what? And like at the beginning of the movie, like when Profian, the main bad guy, he like he tries to make a rod or a staff of some kind to actually control dragons, but he ends up killing the dragon because it gets out of control, and then its blood like oozes down onto the river, and then it bursts into flames. And I'm like, is dragon blood actually that? Is it like flammable, or is that just an effect they created for the sake of a dramatic effect?
Yeah, that was something that they made for the movie.
Yeah. Um. Otherwise, I think the movie holds up, is good in its own merit because it's a good campaign. Even though
Yeah.
I don't think Seville was an actual thing in D&D, but I could be mistaken. But then the sequel kind of rectified that a little bit because it was an actual D&D campaign and it had like really good moments. Um, the other thing I was a little weirded off about was Profian's main hench guy is basically he's running around with like blue lipstick
Yeah.
on his face. Like it's like that's a little weird. And then he gets like a spell put on him where he has like these things coming out of his ears. Oh, that's gross. I'm not even gonna. I don't want to talk about that. But
Anyway.
yeah. Anyway, yeah. So and then well, Wrath of the Dragon God was pretty good. It's better than the first movie, but it does suffer from its own other things. It's better. It's it's one of those things that you have to watch it and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They have a cleric, they have um a mage with a familiar. the movie's like 20 years old, so there's no reason for spoilers, but basically the mage sends her familiar into like a basically like a death trap. They don't know it's a death trap, and it just gets vaporized. And I think that little puzzle that they incorporated was really cool. Although just the way like the main bad guy who actually survived from the first movie, and the way his hand just gets cut off and he just nonchalantly just walks off. That I think that was the funniest part of the movie. That, and also like the ending. It's like you're unleashing basically an unkillable dragon god, and well, what would you expect to happen? Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Stay tuned next week for our review of the newest D&D movie, which unfortunately does not feature Jeremy Irons or blue lipstick, but I think we can give those two things a pass.
I kind of wanted Jeremy Irons to come back and just kind of overact. that would have been
cool.
That would be great. Anyway, so we'll see you next time.